So again, my name is Trey Robinson. I am Waba's DC Bike Ambassador Coordinator, and we will be talking about, or actually walking through, how to fix a flat on our bicycle. So the steps that we'll be covering today in this presentation will be how to fix a flat, some tips just in case you ever catch a flat or need to help a friend, the tools that you may need, how to remove the wheel, how to find your puncture, how to patch the inner tube, looking for what may have caused the puncture or if it is still inside of your tire, assessing your wheel, looking at the tire tread, and finally reinstalling the tube, tire, and the wheel back on the bike. So to get things started, we will cover the tools that will be handy for doing your fixer flat. So the first thing that I have is a set of tire levers. So these tire levers, I will explain as I walk through when I'm using these, why they are helpful, where you can find them, and some other helpful information about them. But the first thing is going to be tire levers. The next thing that I have on hand, which this is optional actually, it is a pen or marker. Again, later on I will be telling you all why these may be helpful if you have them on hand. The next thing that I have is a floor pump. So my floor pump here has a gauge on the top. So this is telling me exactly how much air pressure that I'm putting inside of the inner tube. Again, I don't have a hand pump on hand, but alternatively, you can use a hand pump. Some hand pumps don't have a gauge on them, but I can also walk you through how to kind of gauge if you have the proper amount of air pressure in your inner tube. And then the final thing, which of course is going to help get this all resolved, is a patch kit. So our patch kit here has a few different items in them, which are generally standard among all patch kits. The number one thing is going to be your vulcanizing fluid. So this isn't super glue, this isn't any regular glue, it is vulcanizing fluid. So again, I will explain as I'm using this why this is a bit different and how to use it. The next thing that it'll have is maybe a small sheet of sanding paper. So again, I will talk through why this is helpful and how to use it. And then the last thing is an assortment of patches actually. So in my case, my patch only has one size to it, but different size patch kits or different patch kits has a various sizes to them as well. So you may have some smaller ones or some larger ones for those larger punctures that you may have. So those are the things that we have on hand. Just doing a recap, we have a pen or a marker. We have some handy tire levers. We have our actual patch kit, which included sanding paper, vulcanizing fluid, and patches. And then the final thing is our pump. So now that we have everything that we need, we can actually move over to our bicycle that unfortunately we were riding, and then we started to feel funny wobbles in the wheel and realized that it was flat. Or you may have your bike sitting for a while and then realize that it let out air pressure over time, and then realizing that it's actually a puncture in the wheel instead. So my bicycle here is what we'll be demonstrating on today. So the first thing that I want to do to prepare to actually remove the wheel, I will be demonstrating using the rear wheel, and also this bike has rim brakes. So rim brakes versus disc brakes. And the first step to removing the rear wheel is actually disengaging the brakes. So I find this helpful because in some cases, your brakes are so close to your rim, and generally your tires are wider than the rim. So when you go to take it off, you can't because the tires are snagging onto the brakes. So the first thing that I like to do is disengage the rear brake. So again, this could be applied to the front brake as well. But my first step in disengaging the rear brake is, if you have a barrel adjuster, turning that all the way in so it is as it is loose as possible. And then at the rear, this may be a bit tricky to see, but I do have some bike parts that I pulled off of the bike that I will kind of bring up to the screen that'll help you all see it a little bit better. But at the back of the bike, you have your cable, which is coming from the left side, the cable here comes onto like a little J piece. I know this may not be easy to see, but a little J piece, and then the end of the cable is here. So what you're going to do, you have two calipers. So no, this may not be the best to see, but it's a little bit better. So you have two calipers. So these silver things on the left and right side, what I'm going to do is take them, I'm going to squeeze them so they are going inside and kind of going towards each other. So squeezing them, and then this little hook piece is what I was referring to. I'm going to take that and I'm going to pull that out. So again, taking it out, and now my rear brake is disengaged. So if I pull my rear brake here, again, it's not squeezing the rim because they are disengaged. And just to give you a up close view on what that may look like, I have a brake lever and brake cable off of the bike that I can show you exactly what I just did up close. So here we go. So we have our little J piece here. This is what I was referring to. You see it has like a little hook to it, and these are our calipers. So this is the little piece that I will be removing. So when I said I'm squeezing these two in, and I'm taking this J piece and I am pulling it out from this little hook. So as you all may be able to see, I'm hoping that you can, I'm taking that piece and I'm pulling it out. So now your brakes will pretty much be sitting like this. And when you pull your brake, they won't be engaging. And I will again show you how to reinstall this as we put the wheel back on. So now that we have our wheel, our brake disengaged, we can begin to remove the rear wheel. So if you have a bike with disc brakes, if you have a bike with quick release, this is where you will take your quick release, which I have on this wheel. This is pulled off of the bike, but you will pretty much hold one side while you turn the other, or take this little lever and pull it upwards while you turn the other and kind of twist it until it loosens up a bit. And then you should be able to pull it off of the wheel. In my case, I have a bike that has a bolted axle. So that means that it does take a wrench or a special tool to get the rear wheel off. So in that case, I will loosen my two bolts on the rear wheel up first. They're generally the same size bolts on most bikes, which is a 15mm wrench. So if you happen to have one of those on hand and do have a bike with a bolted axle, I would recommend keeping that, or an adjustable wrench could also work as well. So I do have, so both bolts loosened up on the left and right hand side. So again, if you had quick releases, this will make the process a lot quicker, as the name states. And in my case, I don't have a bike stand, and most likely if you're out riding, you won't have access to a bike stand either. So what I would recommend doing is taking your seat and your seat post, raising it up just a little bit, and I will tell you why that step right there is helpful, and then laying the bike down, and we're going to flip it over so the bike is sitting on the seat and the handlebar. So this gives us access so we can easily remove the rear wheel without trying to have to hold it up or anything, especially if we don't have a bike stand. So what I'm going to do is lay the bike down. And you can also do this step before even loosening up your wheel. And I'm going to flip it over. So now we have an easy access to remove our rear wheel. So now what I'm going to do is, if you have a bike with gears, you will kind of have this contraption here known as the rear derailleur. So your rear derailleur and your chain is kind of what's keeping your bike, keeping your wheel on the bike right now. So what I'm going to do is take the rear derailleur, I'm going to kind of pull back on it. You can easily do this, and then take your wheel, grab it, and you're going to pull straight up. And it should come right out of these rear dropouts, is what these two little slots here where your rear wheel goes in. So we can actually sit our bike to the side and get back to it probably when we are ready to put the wheel back on. So we now have our wheel that has the flats. our first step that we're going to do to get the inner tube out, because that is actually what we need to patch. We're not patching the tire, we are patching the inner tube that is inside the tire. So what we are going to do is take our handy tire levers. So when you are looking at these tire levers, I look at them in a way that looks like a little dog with 2 ears on the side. So you have like this top part. So this is the actual lever that you will pry up with, and I'll show you how to use that. And then this, the other side has 2 little ears, and I will show you what these 2 little ears are helpful for. So you are going to take your tire lever with the lip faced up like this to remove the tire. So you're going to put that lip just up under the tire and then pry down on it. So what those 2 little ears are helpful for is locking your tire lever on the actual spoke, so you don't have to kind of hold it in place while you go to get your next one. You can take one of these little ears on the side, and they have perfect little slots that you can slide one of the spokes inside of. So if you have one tire lever, you can kind of work your way around, and it will be a little tougher to do, but just taking it out and then moving it down. But if you do have more than one, it is easier. So locking that one in place, and I generally go about 2 to 3 spokes down. So 1, 2, I'll probably go right about here and do the same thing. And lock it in place. So if you have another one, you can put it in kind of like, again, 2 to 3 spokes down. Or if you only have 2, you can take that first one and then do the same thing. Move about 2 to 3 spokes down. And at this point, you should be able to create like a little gap, or you should have like a gap where you can fit your fingers through. Again, if you don't want to stick your fingers in there and pull the tire off, you can just work your way around using the tire lever. But in this case, I will kind of put my finger inside of that gap that I created and then pull out on it. So I will work my way around by removing the tire from one side of the rim. Cool. So it is now removed from one side of the rim, and I can tell just by I am able to see the actual inner tube all the way around. My next step is going to be to find the valve stem. So the valve stem is where you put air inside of your inner tube. That is here for me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of create an opening so I can kind of get my hand up through there, but I'm going to push up on the valve stem to get it inside of the rim. And then from the inside of the rim, it may not be easy to see, but I'm going to grab the valve stem that I just pushed up, and then I'm going to pull it outside of the rim. So now you see it is outside, it's not inside that hole. And from there, I'm going to kind of pull down on it or pull out on it. And again, as the same step as removing parts of the tire, I'm just going to work my way around. I don't like to just pull down from one spot because you never know if it's attached to anything. I know with inner tubes that have been sitting inside of the tire for a long time, they can get like stuck to the tire. So instead of causing any more issues, I just kind of work my way around. And there we have our inner tube outside of our bike. So again, if you needed to replace your tire, I will recommend taking the tire all the way off of the rim. But in the case of just replacing an inner tube or patching your inner tube, I would recommend leaving half of it on and half off, which will make installing a lot easier. So we're going to sit our rim and tire to the side, and we are going to get our inner tube. Sorry. So we're going to get our inner tube, and then we are going to take our pump, which is here, and we are going to inflate it so we can find where our puncture is. So I have a pump that has a gauge on it, and this does have 2 different adapters, and I can show you in just a second what these are used for. So in this case, I have these little this little slider on the side. So if you may see beside that slider has two letters. So one is an S, one is a P. So S is short for Schrader. So Schrader is talking about the type of valve that it is. This is a Schrader valve. So Schraders are generally your standard valves for tires, similar that are on cars. Most cars have Schrader valves as well, but others have P, which is short for Presta valve. So again, you have Schrader and you have P. And to identify the type of valve that you have, I find it easier just to remember that the bigger one, the bigger opening, which is the S, is Schrader, and the smaller one, when you switch it, it has a smaller opening. So I don't know how easy it is to see there, but it has a very small opening. And this is what a Schrader valve, this is what a Presta valve looks like. So it is a bit different to add air into it. You would pretty much take this little in here, loosen it, and then you can add air into your tire, inner tube, sorry. So what you would do, in our case, we have Schrader, so we will make sure it is on the S. We will take our pump, we will put it on the valve, and we will take this little piece here to lock the pump in place. So this is just making sure that it doesn't pull off and it's locked in place. So what we're going to do, we're going to inflate this. I know you're saying that it has a flat, so how we're going to pump it up. So what we're going to do, we're going to pump it up as much as we can. And if you can get enough air in it, you will probably hear or feel some air escaping from the actual inner tube. And in order to find where that air is escaping from, I like to work in sections. So sections about this wide. I try to just focus on this section, and what I'm doing, I'm kind of getting close to it. I'm looking around. I'm actually putting my face pretty close to it, because if that air is coming out, I may feel it blowing onto my face. And I'm also running my hand across that area as well, just so I can feel where that air may be coming from. So again, a few pumps just to get some air holding in it, and then focus on this section. I'm looking around, not seeing anything. I will move on to my next section again, work my way around, and I started at the valve stem, so I know when I get back to the valve stem, I've made a full circle. So again, starting in that section and then working my way to the next. So again, it may be a little hard to keep adding air into it, and it also may be harder if you're on the side of the road where there may be like a lot of noise. You may lose the aspect of being able to hear the air coming out, but you will still be able to kind of feel it coming out if the hole is big enough. And even if it is small, you may still be able to find it. So this is helpful if you're in a quiet area, but again, some of you all may catch a flat when you're out on the road. So in this case, you would use kind of rubbing your hand across the inner tube in order to find the hole. So to make sure, so as I ran my hand across this area, I kind of felt some air hit my hand. So it lets me know that I found the section that it is in. So this is why I work in sections, so I'm not just looping around and not sure exactly where it is. So trying to pump it up and trying to find exactly where that is. And kind of when I rub my hand over this area, I can narrow down, make that section a little smaller to figure out where it is. And actually, I can see where that puncture is. So that little nick there lets me know that my puncture is right there. So I did find it, and I can know by kind of just sticking my finger over the hole. And when I pump it up, I'm not hearing any more air escape. So now we're going to move to one of our tools that I said is optional but can be helpful, and this is a pen or a marker. So I will use the pen in this case. You can use a marker. Again, these are both black, so it may not be the easiest to see, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a small circle or just a circle around that area of the puncture. So here, it is identifiable. It doesn't have to be like something that you can easily see, but when I go around my inner tube, I can notice that that's where my puncture is. So this is helpful. So if I ever have to sit my inner tube down to go grab my patch kit or go grab any other tools, I can pick my inner tube back up, look around it, and instead of having to do that entire section by section, I can just look and try to find out where I marked it off at. So you can actually remove the pump from the inner tube, and I'm going to sit this to the side, and I'm going to pick up my patch kit. The first thing that I want to take out of my patch kit is sanding paper. So sanding paper is actually going to be used to sand the area directly over and around the puncture. So in this case, I will take my sanding paper and I will pretty much scuff up the area over and around that puncture. This is going to allow our actual patch to adhere to the inner tube a bit better. So what I'm going to do, take a few scuffs, and I'm just going over it. In some cases, your sandpaper will remove that marking that you made with your pen or marker. So just be mindful of that, after you finish sanding, do your best to keep an eye out on exactly where that puncture is. So again, I'm sanding right over that area, and as you see, that area is a bit scuffed up, and I'm starting to lose my mark there, but that is okay because I have a good eye out on where that puncture is. And even after you finish sanding, you can actually take your pen or marker again and do another circle over it just so you can remember exactly where that is. Your marking won't compromise the patch from adhering to the tube. So I have it pretty sanded down pretty good. So this is just helping that this actual patch bond to this surface a lot easier. Being that this is pretty smooth, when you have a rough area, it allows it to bond a bit better. So I scuffed up kind of directly over and around that area because sometimes you may have a bigger patch. So again, you want to do scuff up a bit more area than kind of what you circled there. The next step is going to be taking your vulcanizing fluid. So again, it even says it on the side somewhere. Yep, says it, vulcanizing fluid or vulcanizing solution right on there. And this is what is going to be like the bond that you use to adhere the patch to the actual inner tube. So what I'm going to do, take the cap off. In most cases, if you have a brand new one, it will be like a foil seal on there, which I know isn't the greatest to see. But in most cases, the cap on the actual vulcanizing fluid will have like a little a point on the inside of it. So you just flip it upside down to poke a hole right in the middle of your vulcanizing fluid, rather than trying to find something to create that opening. You can just use the other side of your cap. So what I'm going to do is find my puncture, which is here, and I'm going to take my vulcanizing fluid and I'm going to squeeze some right on there. Doesn't have to be a lot to start off with. And instead of squeezing it, I am not squeezing it anymore. I am actually just taking the end of my vulcanizing solution and just using it to spread out the solution. So looking at it, it looks like I need a little bit more, so I'm going to squeeze a little bit more on there. And honestly, a little goes a long way in this case, so you don't need a lot. And I'm just using the end to kind of spread it around. And honestly, I found that since this is not super glue or any type of glue, it doesn't stick to your hand much. So to get a smooth surface, I like to just take my hand and smooth it out. Again, if you want to, you can just use the end cap of this. But again, it doesn't get really sticky or tacky, so you can use your hand as well. So I'm just going to rub it around just to create a smooth surface. So again, when you apply your vulcanizing fluid, again, make sure that you are covering the area enough that will cover the entire patch. So again, if you have a big patch, you may need to add a bit more so it's covering more area. So with our vulcanizing fluid, you need to let this sit for about 3 to 5 minutes. So in that case, we're going to sit this to the side. And again, when we pick it up, we should be able to identify exactly where we put that at. So it shouldn't be a problem. We're going to sit this to the side for a few minutes to dry. And while we do that, we can assess our tire and our wheel just to see what may have caused the puncture. Maybe if there's glass still sitting in there, we want to make sure all that stuff is gone before we put our inner tube back inside. So the first thing that I like to do is, of course, if you happen to run over glass, or you know it's glass, or it could be any other sharp objects, even a sharp rock can sometimes cause a puncture. I like to just look inside of the actual tire. So on the inside where we remove the inner tube from, I'm kind of looking around. I'm looking around and I'm feeling around the tire with my hand to make sure that there aren't any sharp objects still left inside of the tire. So visually, I'm looking down in there, and I'm also gingerly taking my hand and rubbing it through there to make sure that there isn't any other debris sitting inside of my tire. So again, I would do that carefully, because if there is a sharp object and when you run your hand through there, you could cut your hand. So just do that carefully. But again, we are looking for sharp objects that are still inside of our tire, because we don't want to put an inner tube back in there with a sharp object still in there, and we will cause another puncture once we reinflate it. So we are just making sure that there is nothing still in there. And after doing a full lap around, this one does seem clear. So sometimes you can just run over glass. It will still be there on the ground and it won't be stuck inside of your tire. In some cases, the glass will get lodged in your tire and you're able to actually see where it punctured at. So now, after we've checked the inside, we can assess the outside of our tire. So now, again, we are just making sure that there are no sharp objects that kind of didn't make it through the entire tire and is just sitting on the outside. So again, doing that full loop around, we are looking at this top part here. So this is your tire tread. So I'm looking at my tire tread to make sure that there are no objects sitting in there. If there is, you would kind of find it, see if you can pluck it out with your hand, or another object, maybe a tire lever can help as well if you don't want to use your hand. And after doing a full loop around, this tire looks good. So that lets me know that my inner tube will be ready to get put back in without any other problems. But I would just like to go over a few other things that you should look for when you are looking at your tire. Now that we said that we'll be covering assessing your tire and your wheel. So let's talk about assessing our tire. Just as I mentioned before, that we will be checking the tread for any objects still in there. You should also be checking your tread to make sure that it isn't super worn down. So when we're checking our tread, we are looking at this section here. So in the case of this tire, it has seen better days. The top here, which is your tread, should look pretty much like the edges. So that lets me know that I don't have the greatest tread on there. And this can be a reason why you caught a flat, because it doesn't kind of have any, the glass or any other sharp objects can pretty much go right through this area because it is a lot thinner than it used to be. So this is another reason why we want to assess our tread. In this case, I would recommend looking into a new tire. So in that case, you can also see it has kind of like thread. So that's letting me know that it is wearing down pretty far. So I should be looking into replacing this tire. So this is what I would say a bad tire tread looks like. It should look a little bit more like this. I know these are two different tires, but again, as you can see, I have plenty of tread here. I have knobs there, where this one, it is pretty smooth on the inside and it has knobs on the outside. It should look more like this tire here. So assessing our tire, if I had one that was on the bike that looked like this, I will be looking into replacing it as well. Then the next thing, or the last thing that you should check for on your tire, is the sidewall. So the sidewall in this tire here is where you see these letters. So this is actually like a street tire. It is meant to look slick. It isn't super worn or anything. It just has that look to it. But when we're looking at the sidewall, we're making sure that it doesn't have any cuts or anything in it. So we're going to do, again, as we kind of made our way around the tire, looking for any cuts or any openings or anything that sharp objects can easily go through, because sometimes you can be riding and it can puncture your sidewall as well. So this side looks good. Let's flip it over and assess it again. So as I'm looking at this one, I am actually seeing two spots. So if you see that little slit there, that is letting me know that my sidewall is kind of weak, because honestly, something sharp could honestly go through there. And even when I push my finger from the back, I am seeing parts of my finger from the other side. So that lets me know that my sidewall isn't in the greatest condition. So I should look on replacing that. And actually, not only there's another slit not too far from me here. So this is an indication that your sidewall is bad on your tire, and you should also look into replacing it. There have been talks of folks that have been able to put like a boot, which is pretty much like trying to seal that cut there. So I've heard folks of putting like $1 bill on the inside of there, folding it up a few times and putting it inside, especially if you're out riding and you need to get home. If you have $1 bill or something to put on the inside there, I've heard folks do that, but I think that is a temporary solution, and in the long run, you should be looking to replace that tire. So that is another indication that we're looking for when we're checking our tires. So again, we checked the top, which was the tread, and the sidewall as well. And now, actually that bought us about 3 to 5 minutes. So we probably can go back over to our inner tube, kind of look at that area. And to the touch, again, it shouldn't feel too tacky. Like it may be a little sticky, but tacky as far, this is not tacky at all. And I think we are ready to put our patch on. So what you can do is take your patch. They are generally together. This foil is pretty easy to rip off one of your patches so you have one separately. And then they are generally on a foil backing. So what you would do is take the clear portion and pull it away from the clear backing, and your patch should stick to that clear portion. So you can get rid of this, and we are going to find our puncture. So again, when we are putting our patch on, we want to put basically the puncture directly in the center of this black circle. So we don't want it on the edge where the orange is. We want the actual puncture directly in the middle of this black surface on the patch. So finding my puncture there, I'm just going to do my best to eyeball it. Again, it doesn't have to be great, but making sure that the puncture is at least in the black section rather than on the orange. It doesn't have to be directly in the center though. So I'm kind of doing my best. I see where the hole is, and I am going to put it over what I think is the center. And now that I have it on there, I'm going to press it down on the center and the edges. So that means pressing it down on the black and the orange part. And I'm taking my thumbs as like a platform for the back, and I'm pressing it against my thumbs to create that bond. So I'm pressing it pretty firm, again, making sure that I'm sealing the inside and outside of that patch, because with the once you reinflate it, basically that air will be looking for somewhere to escape from. So if you don't have it all the way sealed on the edges, mainly like that orange section, that air will try to escape from that section. So again, I'll just take a minute or so to make sure that it is seated all the way around. So again, working in sections, just making sure that I have it pressed down all the way around. And another tip is that clear backing, I leave it on there. I do that because from trial and error, I have tried to peel the clear backing off, and it will try to lift your actual patch from the inner tube. So it will not hurt for you to leave this on your inner tube. So that is another tip. Do not try to remove this. If it does come off, let it come off on its own, but I would not recommend trying to peel it away yourself. So I think this is pretty good. And a way that we can test that is by taking our pump and adding air. So if we are not hearing any air, the main thing that we're going to do is just kind of keep an eye out directly on the area where we put the patch from to make sure that there is no air escaping from that section. So as I worked in the section before, kind of getting close to it, feeling over it, and I don't hear any air escaping or feel any air escaping. So that lets me know that my patch is actually holding. But what I will do one more time is working sections around, because there could be a case where you have more than one puncture. So again, starting at my valve stem and work my way around one more time just to confirm that there are no patches. And I will get to your second question in just a second. Thanks for putting that there. So again, it is holding air from when I just pumped it up. So I know that I can just work my way around. So again, I don't hear any air escaping, and after doing a full lap, I can confirm that no air is escaping from the inner tube. So the question that came in was, for the vulcanizing fluid, do you spread it on the area around the hole, larger than the patch you are using, or just to cover up the hole itself? So yes, so directly over the hole and the area that is larger than the hole as well, because you may have a small patch you may have a small or large patch. So I would recommend putting vulcanizing fluid on an area that is larger than the actual hole, not just over the hole itself. Hope that answers your question. So my air is holding. I'm going to actually take air out of this, because when putting your inner tube back inside of your tire, I recommend not having, or having a little air in it, but not have it all the way inflated. Cool. So we can now begin to reinstall our inner tube back inside of the tire. So the first thing that we are going to look for on our rim is that one hole, which is here. That is where our valve stem goes. So working from the side that you pulled the tire off from, we're going to take our valve stem and we are going to find our hole. And we are going to take the inner tube, and the first thing that we're going to do, it is also helpful if you kind of pry back on it. One thing that I did forget to mention when assessing our wheel, on the inside that is covering the rim on the inside is called a rim strip. In some cases, your rim strip may be ripped into place, which can cause a puncture from the inside of your rim, meaning that you never rolled over any glass, but you caught a puncture from the spoke holes that this rim strip is actually covering. So when looking at your rim, again, making sure that that rim strip is covering, or is not ripped in any section, but it is covering all of these little spoke holes. So all these spoke holes go to screws that are on the inside of the rim. So again, just visually looking in the inside, just making sure that it is not ripped, but it is covering all of those holes. So in this case, this one is looking okay, but definitely something that I wanted to mention. So again, finding our valve stem hole, and I do find this section helpful to do if the wheel is laying down flat on the floor, but I'm just demonstrating for visual purposes. But I'm finding my valve stem hole, which is there, and I'm going to take my valve stem, put it down in the hole, and then kind of tuck the inner tube inside of the tire. Again, this is the section where I said it is helpful to do on the ground, and that's actually what I'm going to do now. So I like to lay it down flat on the floor so you can kind of spin it and work your way around. So I put my valve stem in the hole. Now I am just tucking my inner tube inside of the tire. again, we want to make sure that there is not too much air in here, because when you put it in, you just need a little bit of space to work with. And when you have too much air in there, you won't have all the space you need. So I'm laying out a little bit more air pressure, but I've tucked that all the way in. And now we can put this side of the tire back on the rim. So I like to start by hand, and then in that last section, you may need a tire lever, but I will start by hand by pretty much pulling the tire back over the lip of the rim. So again, working in sections, I'm kind of holding this side in place. And I'm just kind of popping it right over the rim. And this is like the last section that needs to go on. And in most cases, this last section will be the hardest. So as you see, I am not easily able to pull that over. So what you would do is take your tire lever, and to remove the tire, we had the lip faced up. In this case, we will turn it around so the lip is face down. So what we will do is stick the tire lever inside, just as it is inside of the rim, and then pry up on it to get the tire over the rim. So again, holding that in place, and then doing the same in the next section. The reason why these tire levers are helpful to use is because they don't have sharp edges. Most of these edges are rounded, and they won't actually puncture your inner tube. I know folks have they pretty much try to use whatever they have on hand if they don't have a tire lever, but if you use something sharp like a flathead or any other sharp object to put the tire back on, you could potentially puncture the inner tube. So that's why tire levers are helpful, because these rounded edges will not cause any punctures to your inner tube. So we have this all the way back on. So our next step is going to be putting it back on the bike. So we can get our bike back over. And just as we did before, we are going to just line up the side that has the gears with the side with our chain. We're going to kind of open this little section up, and we're going to pretty much drop those little, either if you have quick releases or if you have a bolted axle, just slide that in place. And then make sure that it is seated all the way down by pretty much just pushing down on it. And I'm just going to tighten it by hand, and then use my tool to tighten it all the way. And if you have a quick release, you'll pretty much hold one side while twisting the other until it gets tight. And I can show you once I get this one tightened how it looks with the wheel with the quick release that I have. So again, I'm just holding it down so it's staying seated in place. And then the next thing that I like to do is just do a quick pedal to get my gears caught back up. And I am good there. But if you have a bike with quick release, I recommend holding the side that doesn't have the lever. So holding this side and then twisting this one. And finally, you would want to kind of push that lever till it gets nice and snug. And if you have a bike with a quick release and you are specifically working with the rear wheel, I recommend taking your quick release lever and pointing it towards the rear of the bike. So once you push it down so it's snug, pointing this lever so it's pointing towards the back of the bike. So I say do that because if you're ever riding and you happen to come across any wires or a bush or anything, it could have the potential to snag that lever if it is pointed forward and release your wheel. So, and your wheel could have the potential to come off. So if it is pointed backwards, that wire or bush should just run right over it. So that is why we recommend pointing it towards the rear. So that is back on, and our final step is going to be to add air. So when we are adding air, we are looking, as we identified earlier, on the sidewall. So on the sidewall, you will find some numbers. Some tires have a range. So this one says 65 PSI. So in other cases, you may have a tire that may give you a range. It may say 40 to 65 PSI, meaning that you should put a minimum of 40 PSI and a max of 65. So this one, since it just has one set of numbers, 65, that is going to be our max. So we don't want to go past 65 PSI. And we know how much PSI, which stands for pounds per square inch, which is another term for air pressure. And we know how much we are putting in according to our gauge here. So our gauge goes by 20, so 0, 20, 40, 60. So a little bit after that 60 is going to be our max. So what we are going to do is attach our pump. Lock it in place, and then add air until we get to about, I would recommend stopping, if your max is 65, I would recommend stopping at about 50. I don't recommend going all the way up to 65 right away, because some people find out that like they don't need to go that far up to get to where they need to be. So again, I'm going to pump this until it is probably around 50 PSI, and then I'm going to feel the tire to kind of assess to whether it is good or not. So according to my gauge here, I am probably a little under 50 PSI, but I'm going to assess my wheel first. And by squeezing it, I can actually feel that this is pretty firm. So this feels like a good air pressure. I will assess it again once I'm actually sitting on the bike and seeing if this compresses any, and that will indicate if I need to add any air to it. So again, I don't recommend going all the way up into your max PSI, because in most cases you don't need to. So again, going pretty close to it, so about 50 PSI. And then once you sit on the tire, kind of look at it. But by feeling it, it should feel pretty firm, and this is feeling pretty firm. The last step is going to be re-engaging our rear brake. So remember, in the beginning, we disengaged it so we can easily get our wheel off. In this case, we are going to re-engage it. We are going to take our J piece, and we are going to hook it right inside of the end there. And now when we pull our brakes, it is actually locking up the rear wheel. So that lets me know that my brakes are good. I can even do like a quick pedal and then pull the brake just to confirm that the rear brake is working. So this bike does not have a kickstand, so I am going to lay it back down. But that is essentially how we do a fix-a-flat.